All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Lockup Shutdown podcast. My name's Monica. Joining me, as always, is my good friend Zach. How's it going tonight?
Pretty good. We got our first round of the playoffs all done, and I haven't never made a March Madness perfect bracket in what seems like my whole life, but as of right now, after one round, I've got a perfect NFL bracket on my first attempt. So we'll see how it goes after this weekend.
Going into Monday Night Football, it was looking like one of us was going to be perfect. We were perfect up until that point and obviously diverged on the Cardinals and Rams game. But that's beside the point. It's time to move on because it's the divisional round of the NFL playoffs now. And today, we'll talk about Mike Mayock's sudden firing, decide just what the Bills' blowout win against the Patriots means for the rest of the AFC bracket, and our boldest way too early takes. But first, as always, it's our biggest surprise from the week behind. Zach, do us the honors.
My biggest surprise, can't say much, caught me by surprise based off my perfect bracket. I won't brag too much, but my biggest surprise got to be from that game where we did split our opinions in the Rams beating the Cardinals. I did take the Rams in that game, but I didn't think it was going to be 28-0 at one point in the game, and the Cardinals won that game before the first half was Rams won that game before the first half was even over. So embarrassing performance to say the least from the Cardinals.
I certainly didn't expect that one to be a blowout loss by the Cardinals, and in fact I thought it was going to be a win by the Cardinals, but unfortunately we didn't get to see Cliff Kingsbury do any sort of non-Cliff Kingsbury play calls, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. My biggest surprise from Wild Card Weekend was just how unbelievably dumb Mike McCarthy is. Now, you'd think no one should be surprised by this. Everybody knows this is common information, right? Clearly, you didn't watch the game against the 49ers because he got dumber. With 20 seconds left on the clock in a playoff game, down by 6 points and with no timeouts left on the 40-yard line, Mike McCarthy makes the most 200 IQ play call of all time and calls a QB draw straight out of the New York Giants playbook with 3rd and 9 on the 2-yard line and a quarterback sneak. To make matters worse, Dak Prescott forgot the rules of the game, forgot to hand the ball to the umpire, and for the second time the entire game, the umpire wasn't able to get out of the way fast enough, and that completely screwed over Dallas. Mike
I don't
McCarthy's...
think there's any blame to be given to the officials on that one. If you play dumb games, you win stupid prizes, and the Cowboys played about as dumb of a game as you could play and got duly rewarded for it by the referee if he didn't get out of the way in time. But I thought he did as much as he could when you got 5 300-pound men all standing right next to each other. There's not much room for the referee to go in between them, and the clock hits zeros and the Dallas Cowboys season is over, but I don't think many people are complaining about that right now.
I'm certainly not complaining. It's always a good day when dem boys lose, but there was another time earlier in the game when the same umpire, after a substitution by Dallas, obviously had to hold them there for a few seconds so that way the defense could make any substitutions they needed to. However, he stood there in the way a bit too long, could not get out of the way fast enough, and Dak couldn't snap the ball fast enough, and therefore they got a delay of game. That was just after their fake punt that was all over the place at the time. Ultimately, Mike McCarthy's clock management and overall play calling were atrocious as always, and the Cowboys suffered in a potentially controversial loss as a result of it.
Yeah, that was a loss and about one of the dumbest plays I've seen from a team in a long time. The Cardinals were the Niners were obviously blanketing the sideline, not giving the Cowboys any options on the sideline because they knew the Cowboys had to get out of bounds to run another play, and Cowboys are like, well, if you're going to give me the middle of the field, I'll take the middle of the field, and fell right into the trap that the Niners and everyone else laid out for them to walk right into, and that's exactly what they did. And I think Mike McCarthy deserves a lot of the blame, but Dak Prescott definitely deserves some of the blame as well. If you go down at 10 seconds and get 5 less yards instead of going down at 8 seconds. You have time to spike the ball, get 1 second, and have a shot to the end zone. But even that wouldn't have been the smartest idea. I think if you take 2 shots to the end zone from where they were, would have been a lot better than trying to gain those 5-10 yards that he got on the QB draw and running out of time and eventually potentially costing his team the game.
Yeah, ultimately, the Cowboys have all the wide receivers in the world to have caught that 1, 2, maybe even 3 attempts at the end zone. Let's move on and talk about someone who has gotten fired from some stupid decisions, and that's Mike Mayock, who was fired by the Raiders on Monday, I believe. With Mike Mayock being fired, are the Raiders committing to full rebuild mode this offseason and in the future?
I don't think they're committed to full rebuild mode right now. They've got enough pieces to win a lot of games in the near future, and yeah, almost everything that could go wrong for the Raiders off the field went wrong, but on the field, they've still got Derek Carr, Josh Jacobs. They've got Hunter Renfrow, who seems to still be killing every cornerback he comes up with somehow. They got Bryan Edwards. They got aging Deshaun Jackson, Darren
Jones.
Waller. So they've got good pieces, and I think the biggest issue is their draft decisions that have come back to bite Mike Mayock and cost him his job, which is weird because he started as a draft analyst on NFL Network, and that's how he got his job at the Raiders. And then if you look at his draft picks, 16 of their 23 picks are on the roster, but in the top 4 of those top 5 picks were all gone within 2 seasons. So seems like those high picks that you need to create a playoff winning team couldn't stick around in Las Vegas or Oakland. And that's what let them off the rails.
Listen, if there's one person I don't trust to run a team, it's a draft analyst of all people. You've got nothing else to do but analyze drafts, and you're not even good at that. We're looking at you, Mel Kiper. Listen, I think that this move might signal that the Raiders just might be going into a full rebuild mode. Las Vegas is now without a head coach, assuming they don't re-sign their special teams coach as the head coach now that he has done a pretty good job as the interim coach, and they're without a GM. And whoever steps into both of those positions is ultimately going to be changing the culture dramatically. Those are 2 big culture positions that have a massive effect, and ultimately every single person is different, and therefore every single culture is going to be a little bit different within different franchises. Obviously, having lost, 2, 4? How many first-round picks have they lost to stupid off-the-field mistakes at this point? I think I've lost count. Regardless, the Raiders have 2 more positions to fill this year than just their offensive line and linebacker core, which are seriously lacking in every aspect. I don't think that we're going to see the same Raiders from this season going into the future, and I think we're going to see another long-term drought caused by a few individuals' short-sightedness, that being Mike Mayock, John Gruden, Henry Ruggs, Damon Arnett.
Yeah, there's plenty of turnaround in the Raiders facilities right now, but I think there's one rule that I stand by whenever any team is trying to, whether it's rebuild or reload. There's one rule I would always like to follow, and that is let the GM choose their head coach. So as long as the Raiders don't go and hire a full-time head coach before they hire a GM, I think they'll be taking the right steps. But if you go and hire a coach and then have the GM in charge of the coach after the coach is already there, typically doesn't work out as well as you would hope. I don't have any statistics to back it up, but you have your organization and then tell someone to come in and lead the group, but they got to follow everything else that you've already created before they got there seems to not work out too well chemistry-wise. And I think that's exactly what would happen if you get a coach before you get a GM. So I think GM's number one job is to get a head coach who's able to lead a team. And if you have a GM before the coach gets there, I think it'll work out much better than the other way around for the Raiders.
Absolutely. Let's move on and talk about the Buffalo Bills, who had an absolutely amazing game in a 47-17 blowout over the New England Patriots. Do the Bills prove to the world that they're contenders after blowing out the Pats?
The Bills are definitely contenders, but I don't think they needed to prove it to too many other people after the regular season. I think everyone should have realized that the Bills are legit, and Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, with Dawson Knox having a tremendous season this year, as well as Stephon Diggs. And the Bills got everything you could want in a playoff team. They've got the defense, they've got the receivers, they've got the quarterback and the running back. So I don't see many weaknesses in the Bills team, but yeah, I didn't expect them to come out and beat a Bill Belichick-led team by 30 in a playoff game and have Josh Allen go for 5 touchdowns. And I'm sure you're going to say that, but to score on every single drive the entire game is almost unheard of. And that's exactly what the Bills did every single drive in a playoff game.
It's not just almost unheard of, it was completely unheard of until that game against the Patriots. If you didn't already believe the Bills were contenders, you really ought to now. Like you said, it's the first time in NFL history that a team has recorded a perfect offensive game, scoring 7 touchdowns on 7 drives. They didn't have a negative yardage play until the kneel downs, and they were perfect on 3rd down until the kneel downs as well. Josh Allen had more touchdown passes than incompletions, and if he isn't a top 5 quarterback on your list right now, you shouldn't be talking football at any given point in the near future. Josh Allen is top 5. I don't think he's 5. I don't think he's 4. He might be 3, could be 2. I'd argue he might even be number 1 in the league right now. Everyone in the Bills, offense, defense, special teams, coaches, everyone's in perfect sync right now, just in time for the playoffs, and there isn't a doubt in my mind that this February, the Bills are coming home with a trophy and a handful of rings.
Yeah, I think the Bills held up their end of the bargain on your Super Bowl prediction much better than the other team that you predicted would make the Super Bowl. But gotta agree with you that if you didn't have the Bills contenders before then, you ought to have them there now. And Josh Allen is proving why everyone was so high on him to begin with, and he tore apart one of the best defenses that we saw all season last week.
Absolutely, and we definitely didn't see a good performance out of Mac Jones, that's all I'm saying. I was going to have something up here about did Jamar Chase solidify himself as Offensive Rookie of the Year? I think he already did that in the regular season. I don't think we need to argue that at any given point. Let's move on. Wildcard Weekend is completely in the books. We've seen every single game. We might have some bold takes to deliver. So tell me, Zach, now that Wildcard Weekend is over, what is your boldest, way too early take?
My boldest take is Odell Beckham Jr. and the Los Angeles Rams are not going to win a Super Bowl while he's there.
Oh.
And I'm saying that for both this year and however long you may think Odell is going to be in Los Angeles. I know that sounds crazy after watching what they just did against the Rams or the Cardinals, but I guess that's why it's called bold takes. And I'm just not convinced with everything that they have. Matt Stafford is gonna be Matt Stafford and fall back to his Detroit Lions ways. Cooper Kupp has started the season on a tear and still is one of the best receivers in the league, but I don't think he's where he was earlier in the season. And I think the Rams are gonna meet their match this week in the NFC playoffs and lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I didn't send you my notes, did I? I mean, it felt like you ripped a page right out of my book here. Are we on the same page? Have we been doing this podcast for too long that we basically become the same person here? Here's my bold take from Wild Card Weekend. Neither team, neither the Cardinals nor the LA Rams from Monday Night Football is going to be in the playoffs in 2023. Stafford's arm looked completely weak in the game, which is added on to a various number of flaws that have been shown by him this season between his pick sixes and whatever else. Stafford was underthrowing balls left and right. He didn't look the same. I think he's going to be worse than he ever was in Detroit starting next year. I believe we're going to see an outright drop-off, or we're going to see an outright drop-off out of him going into the next season. He's not going to be the same Matt Stafford, and the LA Rams are going to be very disappointed. As for the team on the other side of the ball, we're never going to see the same DeAndre Hopkins again after his injury. It's a major injury. Hopkins had to have surgery. He's had to sit out. Now he's got to wait until next season to play again. He's getting a bit old. I don't think we're going to see the same DeAndre Hopkins ever again. Between that and Kingsbury's horrendous play calling, the overall youngness and inexperiencedness of all their players, by this time 1 year from now, Cliff Kingsbury is going to be looking for a new job.
Yeah, Cliff Kingsbury is got the job because he likes to run an offense and looked good running an offense in college football. But once you get to the NFL level and get NFL caliber defenders, and you gotta go up against Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey, Leonard Floyd every game, you're not able to get those plays off like you would in college. It's almost like eye candy from the Cliff Kingsbury led offenses that are easily read by these NFL coordinators and NFL caliber players. And unfortunately, I think Cliff Kingsbury is on his way down, like you said, but I'm also gonna extend that with another bold prediction that Kyler Murray is not gonna improve to the level that everyone thinks he's gonna be in. Sure, we can bash Cliff Kingsbury all we want for everything the Cardinals did, but if you look at that pick six, which pretty much sealed the game from 3 yards out to make it 21-0, that has nothing to do with Cliff Kingsbury.
That was a very dumb decision by Kyler to throw that ball, but ultimately I think he was trying to prevent a safety there.
Yeah, you got to prevent a safety, but safety's worth 2 points, touchdown's worth 7. You go down 21-0 on the road in a playoff game against the division champs. Pretty much signed, sealed, and delivered at that point. And then they made it 28-0, and my TV was locked up and shut down after that.
Yeah, I had to switch over to playing some games after seeing that. That was most certainly the most awful play I think I've ever watched, and ultimately I started writing a new bracket after that. Like you said, Cliff Kingsbury was eye candy to the NFL, but I think anybody would have been eye candy when they got the pleasure of coaching Patrick Mahomes of all people. Let's move on and talk about our brackets. Now, normally this would be the point where we correct both of our brackets. Someone doesn't have to correct their brackets today, and unfortunately it's not me. I have to correct an entire 3 rounds of bracket because the Rams beat the Cardinals, who I thought were going to be the NFC champions and go on to get blown out by the Bills in the Super Bowl. So let's talk about the divisional round matchup between the Rams and the Bucks, in which I think the Packers are going to get an easy W over the 49ers, I think we just might see the Rams pull off an upset against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't believe in a 1-2 conference championship game. It's very, very unlikely to happen, and I don't think that's going to be happening this year either. We're going to see the Rams get an upset over Tom Brady and
Yeah,
then go on to get blown out by Aaron Rodgers and the Packers.
so you're going with the Bills and the Packers in the Super Bowl, and I can't say you're totally wrong because I had the Packers in the Super Bowl winning it as well. But yeah, you said it. I did get the perfect bracket in the first round, and I'm gonna stick with my guns on all the other games. I think the Bengals are gonna beat the Titans this week with Derrick Henry, without Derrick Henry. I'm going Bengals all the way. And the Chiefs have corrected their defense against the Bills. And that's going to show in that game. Chiefs' weak spot for 5 years, it felt like, was that they couldn't get a stop, and Patrick Mahomes would have to outscore teams. But Chiefs have found a solution to their defense and will stop the so-called best quarterback in the league in the divisional round. And I think the Packers will beat Jimmy G fairly easily. Aaron Rodgers shouldn't be worried too much about that. And then that does leave us with the game of the week between the Rams and Bucks. And you got to be honest, you'd rather see a Rams Bucks game than a Cardinals Bucks game. And that'll be Sunday afternoon. Jalen Ramsey, Tom Brady, and I'm still gonna go with the Bucks in that game as well.
Interesting. Again, I 100%. So I'm kind of going back to what I said was going to be the 2020 Super Bowl, when I said that the Bills and Packers would inevitably make the Super Bowl, and unfortunately, I was incorrect about that. Very incorrect. We saw a Chiefs-Bucks Super Bowl. I think that we're going to see it this year. I think I was a year ahead of my time. This year, we're 100% going to see the Bills getting a win in the Super Bowl over Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. That's what I believe. That's final. That's my bracket. It's on the screen. You can see it for yourself. It's updated. It's perfect. Do you have any modifications that you want to make to your conference championships? Maybe it's not going to be the Bengals and Packers in the Super Bowl. Or are you sticking with it?
No modifications. Don't fix it if it's not broken. Bracket's going good right now, so no changing any other brackets once the tournament starts if you're still 100%. So I'm gonna say that the bracket on the screen right now is gonna match the bracket that you see on NFL.com when you are looking at what times the NFL games are gonna be played at.
Maybe. But that's all we have time for. It's a shorter episode with less segments this week, but ultimately there's not much to talk about. It's the playoffs. The questions are writing themselves at this point. Zach, how are we feeling after this week?
Good. It is a shorter podcast with a shorter slate of games, but less games doesn't mean they're any less meaningful. It's even more meaningful now, and we've got the best of the best 8 teams in the league right now facing off against each other. Can't ask for much more if you're an NFL fan or just a sports fan in general. It's the best time of the year for NFL football, and we'll see what happens in the next 3 or 4 or 5 days.
I'm certainly excited. I've been watching all of the playoff games so far. I didn't watch too terribly much as the regular season went on and dragged on. Every game kind of felt pretty meaningless. Now everything's meaningful again, and I can enjoy watching football. But we'll be watching football on Sunday. You'll be watching football on Saturday, probably hours after we've uploaded this, if our time schedule is correct. But until then, it's time for us to lock up and shut down.